What is going on, guys? So, welcome back to our Twitch. Still trying to figure out how to use this thing, but we've got a really cool guest today. So, I don't know anything about sewing or stitching or any of those things. I'm probably using those terms wrong as I say them right now, looking like a big idiot. But today we have a really cool guest, the Conquest of Thread. They decided that they wanted to come on after I convinced them to come talk about how to make some stuff, because I don't know how to make anything, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who wishes that they did. So super excited to learn a few things. So I'm going to introduce them, or let them introduce themselves. Hey guys. Oh, sorry, your microphone's not on. My bad. All right, you're back.
Okay. So yeah, we're Conquest of Thread, or at least half of Conquest of Thread. And we're going to go over how to make a tool roll today. So, or a knife roll, depending on what you want. I brought in a couple examples. This one's a leather one for knives. So, you got a nice little flap there, little pockets there, place for your Sharpies there. And then we have one I made recently that's a little more complicated. So, like putting in your car. So you have a wide variety of things to go in your car. So this one's, I think that's pretty big, pretty complicated. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with them. They're really easy to customize to whatever tool you want to go in that roll. And they're really nice and light and easy to carry around. So today, we're going to do a very simple one for a set of files. And yeah, just a quick note about materials. We're going to use today some 500D nylon Cordura. Should be able to sew that on most home sewing machines. You also can use a wide variety of different types of fabric, as long as it's sturdy and not stretchy, and your sewing machine will go through it. You should be good to go. But yeah, to start things off, I will let Lee.
Just a heads up, the other camera, the one that's overseeing the tools that you've got in front of you, is not on.
Oh.
We got tons of angles for this one, so this is going to be like a real TV show.
Not get carried away.
And with more complicated things means more things need to get fixed. So, what do you guys do? Like, what does the Conquest of Thread shop do outside of making informative Twitch videos?
So most of what we do is tactical gear. That's most of our products are related to that. We do a lot of custom work. Pretty much anything like that you would want us to make out of fabric, obviously. We're pretty willing to work with people on that. We've done anything from like custom gun cases to, we recently finished an outfit, like a post-apocalyptic zombie fighting outfit that glowed. So we're really open to a lot of custom work. That's kind of the really fun stuff that we enjoy doing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know anything about like what any of this is, basically. So could you clarify exactly, when you were talking about the fabric, what all that meant?
So the 500D Cordura refers to like the double rubs, I think. It's a weird technical term. Basically, the more D you have, the thicker the fabric is. There's a couple of other terms, like Cordura is nylon. This has a waterproof backing. But like I said, you can use a lot of other things like canvas.
Cool.
Anything that's relatively sturdy.
It basically just kind of like refers to like, yeah, the density and the weight of a fabric. And things like canvas and stuff can be done on like home sewing machines and stuff. We're set up for like more industrial things, so that's kind of like the gear that we have on hand. Um, but yeah, so making the tool roll. Some supplies that you'll need. One, sewing machine, obviously. Also some fabric. How much fabric you need is like really dependent on how big your tool roll is, which will be determined by your set of tools. So we are doing a set of files. Nice and simple, all relatively the same size. So get your tools. You want your fabric, some scissors, ruler, what else? Sewing pins. Kristen doesn't need to pin things in place because she's really good at sewing, but I like to pin things. um, and then probably like some chalk, or you can use like a pencil. But chalk shows up the best and it's really easy to wash out. So that's what we use. Ruler, scissors, fabric. So first off, I'm figuring out your actual tool roll size. So what you're going to do first, kind of like lay out your tools on your fabric. So just also we already pre-cut these out, but just imagine it's a big sheet of fabric. And just gonna like kind of space them out and what would like want the layout to be. So one important thing when figuring out the sizes of your pieces is you always want to leave probably like about an inch, like around each edge, for your seam allowance. And that will help make sure that nothing gets like too small once it's like sewn. So yeah, so once you got your tools laid out for your roll, you've got your measurements down. Our measurements for this piece are
13 by 14 and a half.
13 by 14 and a half inches. And this piece right here will be your front panel. All right. So we're going to set our front panel aside. Next is going to be our pocket piece. Also, as you go, you know, it's really helpful to like write all of these measurements down so you don't like forget later on, and like the measurements all kind of like talk to each other, coincide. So for the pocket piece, you're going to want to kind of figure out like how tall you want this piece to be. And you can do that too with like your tools. It's good to have like the pocket go at least like halfway over your tools, so that way they like sit better in place. And yeah, so once you've got that kind of all laid out, we're going to start making some chalk lines. So that's the same for the front panel. You want to make sure that you have seam allowance around your edges. For ease, we're going to do like inch. Up a little bit.
So I'm assuming in this process, it's really important for this piece to be like perfectly 90-degree angles around the corners.
Yeah, it's fairly important. Although to be totally honest with you, if you do like cut it a little off, there's about a half inch of play. So as long as you get it pretty close to right, you don't have to be like this, an artist with scissors. Um, but yeah, everything that we're doing is going to be squares. Most of the time when you do a tool roll, all the pockets, everything is going to be a square. That's relatively simple, easy to do, and functional.
Okay, so I've got like the seam allowances kind of like marked out so that way I kind of like know what my edges are and what I should stay within. And now I'm gonna make some chalk lines to use as like a guide for pocket seams. So because my pieces aren't like super thick or anything, I can kind of do like a guesstimate of how like wide everything should kind of be for each pocket. So for this edge piece, I'm gonna say probably about like 3 inches is good. And then since they're here, like 2. There's another sample. Maybe I'll do like half. I'll do another 2 here. And then I'll be
Where's Mom?
great.
Is she in the office?
Let me do the same for the top. 2, 3. Or 2. So then I'm just going to draw some straight lines. Relatively straight. A little off here. Okay, so I set aside this pocket piece for now. So the other like larger piece that we are going to have for this tool roll is a back panel. So the back panel is going to be the same width as your front panel and the same width as your pocket panel because everything when done will all be stacked like so. But for the back panel, we are going to add height because that will allow us to have a flap that goes down, and that will help like keep all the tools in place. So yeah, so you've got your front panel. You can kind of determine for like yourself how big you want the flap to be. For ours, we just did about like I think 5.5 or so inches taller than our front panel.
Is there like a standard size, or is it just usually like whatever fabric size you happen to have?
So, I like to have generally a bigger flap because, especially like if you're working on cars outside, which is what most of my tool rolls are for, the flap also doubles as a nice little workspace. So when you flap it open, you have like a little area that you can put parts and stuff. But it honestly is really just up to you. The main function of it is so that your tools don't slide out one end of the tool roll.
Makes sense.
Okay, so got your front panel, back panel, pocket panel. And set that aside. Also, I wanted to make a quick note. We made a Google Doc with kind of like more instructions like typed out that we can share later on for anyone who like wants something to be able to read and follow along. And also like we've included all the examples of like our measurements and kind of how we like got those.
Yeah, that would be great.
So next is going to be our straps. So for the straps, for the lengths of them, you can wait until your pocket panel and your front panel are sewn together to know how long that they need to be. But we kind of already have like a general idea of like what we know our lengths are. So for our straps, we just also did 13 inches. And yeah, and for the width of the strap, we are doing 1 inch. But for these guys, what we're going to do when we sew is fold this over onto itself, and also for each side, tuck it in for like a seam. So generally, have like an inch of extra space. And the reason why we did 1 inch as like the width of our strap is because we have 1 inch Velcro, so it will like sew down pretty like even. But yeah, so for the width, it's 3 inches, and for the length, it's 13. And we'll be cutting 2 of these for 2 straps. For the handle, it's generally like the same, but for the length of your handle, probably like best to just like measure the width of your hand, so that way you know like how wide it would want to be, and then do the same thing where you like add an inch and a half for seams, and like an inch and a half on like the other side.
So a lot of it's basically pretty subjective.
Yeah. I mean, for the handle, it really just needs your hand to fit through it. So as long as you make it long enough for your hand to fit through, it's gonna work as a handle.
Makes sense. That's as much thought as I put into it.
So yeah, and then we are attaching self our straps with Velcro pieces. We have 2 sets of that. We did ours 3 inches long, probably good measurement. Two, I'm not so sure how they work. But you're gonna need like 2 pieces of hook Velcro and 2 pieces of loop. And if you didn't know, the loops Velcro side is the fuzzy part, and the hook is the scratchy part. Yeah, and that's it for all the cutting that you need to do.
So now I'm gonna take you through some of the first steps of sewing. Once you got all your pieces cut and your Velcro cut, you're gonna want to sew them together. So
I'm so excited to be able to have this like close-up view. I can't even tell you. It's so cool.
okay. So you want to start. I'm going to start with a handle piece because it's fairly simple. One thing that makes these a lot easier to do is before you sew it, it's best to either crease it, which is what we did here, and you do that by folding over a 1/2 inch on either side and then taking your scissors and just running it down the fabric, and that holds a nice fold. You can also iron them. This is nylon; it will melt, so we're not gonna do that. But if you have like cotton canvas, you can iron these folds over. So everything gets a 1/2 inch inseam. And once you have all your creases done, what you want to do is fold it in half and make sure that's folded down. And then take this and on your creases, fold it in as well. And you can pin this. We're not going to this time because it takes time. So you want to get that together. And then what you're going to do is basically sew a rectangle around the edges. And you want to sew about 1/8 to 1/4 inch away from the edge of the fabric. So, oops, sorry about that. Start out with a back stitch, always. It's rule number 1 of sewing, always back stitch. Yeah, we're gonna go around here.
I was expecting that to be so much louder. I'm not gonna lie. I was like bracing to turn down the audio.
It's a pretty quiet machine, and you may notice a couple of differences from our machines to your standard home sewing machine. One of the things is you may never see me actually like do the presser foot up. This is the presser foot, by the way, because we have a knee lift. So I can do it like that, which is great. Every time I use a home sewing machine, I'll move my knee to try to lift the foot up, and it doesn't move anything, and it makes me angry.
Something very satisfying about watching somebody sew something.
Yeah. So for your handle, that's pretty much it that you're going to do for now. It's just flatten it out. It's a nice little handle. It's got 2 layers. It's going to be good and strong. For your strap pieces, you're going to do the same thing. I should have creased this ahead of time, but I didn't because I forgot. The only difference that you're going to do on these is instead of a full rectangle, you actually only need to do a U shape, because one side of the strap is going to get sewn into the tool roll, so it'll get covered up, and you don't need to hem it on that side. So yeah, do the same thing, crease it, fold it, and this will give you a good kind of visualization of how we got the measurements. So we want it to be roughly an inch wide finished, and we're gonna fold it over and then have the 1/2 inches of salvage. So there we go. Wow. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, if we do that, do the double our finish width and then add the an inch for salvage, and you'll fold it all together, it ends up being an inch wide, which is perfect. And you can change that for like 1.5 inches, 2 inches, and make however wide of a strap you want, or thin. I said make a U shape, and then I started on the wrong corner, so I have to jump over to this side and sew it up. Yeah, and then there you have your strap. You're gonna have 2 of them, obviously, not 1. But I'm not gonna take up your time with that. So for the pocket, you want to go ahead and hem it along just the top edge. Doing the same thing, creasing. Big difference here is we're going to do a double roll hem. So you want to fold it once, crease it, and then fold it again and crease it, and then sew on that. And that's because we're going to have a pocket that's going to have things going in and out. That's a heavy rub area, so you really don't want a raw edge that can fray over time. So for that, and once you have it creased, just sew right down the middle of it. There we go. All right. So our next step is to sew the pocket down to our front panel. So this is the slightly smaller panel of what we have left. For us, it's 13 by 14.5. It is a good idea when you're doing this and you get your measurements and lay everything out. You can go ahead with a chalk, write on it what it is, because a lot of the times, like, it's just a square. So it's hard to remember what it is unless you write it down or have an amazing memory. So, oh yeah, sorry. Gotta remember what I'm doing. So to sew the pocket down, the first thing that we're gonna do is sew a U shape to sew it to the front panel. So we're gonna go down this side, across the bottom, and then back up the top. And once again, you can pin this in place. Since they're all flat pieces and square, they're pretty easy to line up. But there, stop on the corner. There. And then for your pockets, to sew your pockets down, you have these nice lines drawn out that are easy to follow. So what you want to do is start at the bottom, yourself a little back stitch, and then just follow this line up. and stop at the very top. Flip the piece around and sew back. Yeah. So you're going to do that for all of the pockets. Once you have that done, there's some more marking to do, and Frankie's going to handle that.
Yeah. So once you have all of your pockets sewed down, it will look like this. Okay. So yeah, got your pocket. And before you do anything else, it's a good idea just to like check to make sure that all of your tools fit. Yeah, so everything slides in pretty easily. Nothing's too tight. Give ourselves enough room. Yeah, so we can move on. So at this point, you'll kind of decide which way you want to roll up your tool roll. So we gonna do it this way. Yeah, everything fits. And it's nice and snug. All right. So, for the straps, yeah, you're going to kind of figure out where you want them to go. And now we'll probably this kind of like looks like a good spot. And yeah, so for here, I'm gonna pin this down so that way I know exactly where it is and it like stays in place. You kind of want to give yourself like half an inch of an overlap so that way it can be sewn securely in. And then this is a strap that we've like pre-sewn the Velcro onto, but generally the same process of like figuring out where it should go, kind of putting it in place. Yada, yada. All right. So when it comes to the length of the strap, want to like wrap it around the tool roll. This is like a nice length that catches everything. Yeah, so it'll be pretty secure. This is where your Velcro comes in. So for that, you're kind of gonna want to like give yourself about like a 3-inch or so like overlap. So that way like strap Velcro pieces that like nicely like wraps around. So all right. So yeah. Yes. All right. So and figuring out where the handle wants what the handle should be. We already made some like marks here. I'll show you that process. Put this down. So take your handle and place it on your roll. Kind of guesstimate, like, probably want it to be about like somewhere in the middle. And to kind of help know where the middle of the handle is, you can hold it like, mark that down. And if you want to be like exact about the middle of your tool roll, you just measure out a little mark. And then yeah, so this part, it's important to make sure to like have enough space to where you can like grab the roll. Make sure your hand fits through, and then mark down. There, that will go. You can also pin it in place if like you need it to stay still. While you take out all of my tools. So it's important to note that you're not actually going to sew the handle to this piece. You're just kind of like giving yourself like a guiding mark to transfer. I'm gonna make these chalk lines thick. So I'm going to take my back panel now and flip it face down.
Oh.
Here. So you're gonna line up the chalk pieces, all right? And then since we're using chalk, you can kind of just like it down a little bit. And we got like a light like chalk mark that like transferred. So I'm just gonna like put little marks here because I can see enough. If you're not using chalk or like this method doesn't work, you can also just measure it. But
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, I mean, you don't get to pound on the table if you do that.
yeah, it's not as fun. Okay, and you pretty much have everything.
So I'll show you how to sew the handle on. So to sew the handle on, now that you got your marks in place, you want to line up the end with that U shape, and then you're going to sew it on with a box and cross. So you're going to sew a box, and you go around the outside edge, turn, and you only want the box to be about an inch in. So you're going to sew about an inch in, turn the corner, sew across there, and then sew down there. Once you get to that corner, stop on that corner, and then cross your box. You sew diagonally to that corner, and then for the next part of the cross, you follow your stitches back to the far corner, flip it around, and sew like that. So then you have a nice, very strong seam. Hold your handle on. So once you do that, you do it on the other side. Like she pointed out, you want to give yourself, like, give the handle some space so you actually can fit your hand underneath it fairly easily. We do have a piece prepped for this. So that piece. Next step is you're going to sew your straps on to the same piece as your handle. Oh, actually, shoot, sorry, Velcro. I skipped a step. I apologize. So now that you have the length, the final length of your straps figured out, you're gonna want to sew the Velcro on. We put hook on the hemmed end, so you just line it up with the edge. Loop, yes, loop. Sorry. And sew a square.
Now, this might be a stupid question, so I apologize in advance. If somebody did not have a sewing machine, is this something you could stitch by hand, or would it just is that like an unrealistic expectation?
It depends on how much patience you have. There are ways to do this with less stitching involved, for sure. Actually, I'll bring up this leather one that we made. I actually did use a. I guess I can change cameras. Sorry.
No, I'm messing with you. Sorry.
Yeah. So this leather one would be a little bit easier to sew because there's not as many spots. Like it's sewn down in between here and on the edges. But for leather, you can also use rivets to put it in place, and that cuts down on the sewing. And then also for the straps, they're just extra long and wrap around and tuck into themselves. So then you wouldn't have to sew a strap at all. If you're
See, now you're speaking my language. I'm all about the leather.
Yeah. I mean, this is a lot easier. Not like most people don't have a machine that's going to sew through leather easily. But that's definitely an option. If you do hand stitch it, I would try and minimize the amount of sewing that you do because hand stitching is tedious and it takes forever. But if you have the patience, you absolutely can do it. It's just a matter of.
Yeah, and how much does the materials cost for these various bags?
It depends on what you get. Once again, it takes like this one took less than a yard of fabric. So for us, like you can get fabric for like $5 a yard, or you can spend unlimited amounts on fabric. Like there are fabrics that are several $100s a yard. But
I think like a heavyweight like canvas probably max runs you like 15 a yard.
yeah, 25. Yeah, I bet you could go 25. But yeah, they would use pretty limited materials. Most spool rolls are gonna be less than a yard of fabric. It's just how expensive the fabric you want.
And how about that leather one, if you don't mind me asking?
I actually got that as scrap from the project, so I didn't pay for that leather.
Okay, that's the best kind of bag, is the free one.
If you want to get scrap leather, the best way to do it is if you see a couch on the side of the road and it is leather, take an X-Acto knife, stop, and cut the leather off of it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's I've gotten a lot of leather that way.
And you said the fabric is called 50D canvas. Is that what it was called?
This was 1000D.
Okay.
It comes in usually 500, 1000, 1680. It's a couple of different weights of nylon fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And we use like the 1000D and the 1680 for like our gear and like rifle cases and stuff because they are so like heavy duty and like really resistant to wear and tear and like pretty water resistant too.
Yeah, they all have waterproof backing, so that helps.
Cool.
Huh? Oh yeah. Sorry. We've been prompted to tell the semi story. It's so they are very tough. We did have a mishap where a rifle case flew out of the back of our vehicle or truck, on the highway and then got hit by a semi and 3 other cars. And the only thing that was messed up was the zipper pulley. So
Jesus.
they take a beating.
Yeah.
How was the gun?
There wasn't a gun in it.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, that would not fly in my state.
Oh yeah. All right, so back to the Velcro. So now that we got our loop on very end, the hook is going to go on the opposite side of the loop, and you're going to want to place that about 3/4 from the edge, and then sew that on. In the same fashion, sew a rectangle around the edges. All right. And the reason you sew it on opposite sides like that is because a tool roll is a roll. It's going to go like that. Ta-da. So once you have those done, you're going to place them on your outer piece. And I like to place the straps so that they go over the ends of the handle because it seems like it would be stronger, and I don't know if it actually is, but it seems like it.
We'll go with that. I agree.
Yeah. So just go ahead and tack those in place or pin them. But yeah, it's easier to tack them. Okay, give me that. So we're now getting to the part where it all starts to come together. So what we're going to do is take our pocket piece and we're going to lay it so that the wrong sides are facing out, or right sides together. And we're going to sew it down. And when we do this, we're going to start about 1 inch from this edge so that we have room to fold it later for a hem. So all that way. You want to give yourself a 1/2 inch salvage, roughly. And then when you get to the other side, oh shit. Well, okay. When you get to the other side, you're going to stop a 1/2 inch from the edge. I'm going to stop right there because I felt that I sewed through my strap and I shouldn't have. I made a mistake on camera.
No one makes mistakes. Come on.
I mean, the happy accident. So if that happens, it's not a huge deal. Just take your stitches out, move your straps aside so that you don't sew over them, like I did, because they don't work as straps that way. And if you have to do that, just start a couple of inches back, backspace, and continue on your way. And make sure my other strap is out of the way. And stop about there. Okay. So once you get that done, you're going to want to clip your corners. And just cut a little triangle off. Don't cut your seam, obviously. I've got like a good 1/8 of an inch on that side of the stitch. And this is going to help your corners lay flat because there's less fabric to fold in on itself. You have a lot of bulk in your corners, so you want to reduce that as much as possible. And then you're going to take your piece and flip it right side out. Now, those corners can be kind of tricky to poke out. So it's best if you take your scissors and then just use your scissors to poke corners out so they make nice little cornery corners. Sometimes it helps if you stick your tongue out while you do this.
Usually works for me.
That's how you know I'm concentrating. All right. So flatten that out. I'm not sure which camera you're on. Okay. Flatten that out and pull everything. You have what is starting to look like a tool roll. So now we're going to do a top stitch on it so that everything lays nice and flat. For that, it gets a little bit tricky, but what you're going to want to do is start once again about an inch back. Really kind of roll these seams out.
And where is this on the fabric or on the bag?
So I'm going to start on this side.
Hold
right
on
here.
1 second. Okay, right there.
Right there.
Cool.
That would be the, I guess,
Top right.
top right, midway through the right. And what you're going to do for this is do a top stitch. It's usually about around 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. Whatever you're comfortable with, really, and feel like you can get a consistent line the whole way around. The most important thing is you don't want to go further in than your salvage is, because you're sewing all of this down again, reinforcing the seams. So around. There we go. And get to your corners. And here, when we get to this side, you can see how the straps are going to go. All right, now when you get to this corner, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. There's a couple of ways to do this. You can fold and crease this down, and that will help it stay in place. But this edge of the flap here, we're actually going to want to double fold. And like for this, it's a pretty thin fold, and I know that can be kind of tricky. But there's not really any way around it. So you can crease this ahead of time or iron it. That will definitely help. You can also pin it in place. Because it is such a thin fold, it becomes very difficult to pin. And then keep sewing up that, and then do another double fold on the corner. And you got to really hold it in place.
And it's at these steps where I personally really like to use pins, because managing fabric and pins are very tricky.
And Frank mentioned earlier that I don't like to pin things because she was nice and said that it was because I'd been sewing for so long. In reality, the person who taught me how to sew told me that using pins was for sissies and wouldn't let me do it. So I learned to sew without pinning anything. And
Throwing you into the deep end.
yeah. Yeah. You also can kind of tell when you go over those corners, because they are so thick, sometimes your machine will get like stuck on them and you have to like really pull them out the other side. That's pretty normal for something that thick. Just kind of have to do it.
You can always go back and like reinforce those corners if like something came out.
And if all else fails, you can always hand stitch them. Most important thing is that there's not any raw edges that could fray and make your tool roll less strong. So yeah, you can see on there, I did the same thing where I folded this over once again so there's not a raw edge showing. And with everything that we're doing on this, it's all a 1/2 inch salvage. Whenever you fold something over, it's going to be a 1/2 inch. Now that we're at this point, the last thing we have is this guy that needs to be folded down. So you fold that down and crease it or iron it or do whatever you want to do. Hold it in place and then put a top stitch on it. And that is it.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I know how to make a bag now.
Yeah. So yeah, now we have our finished tool roll. Nice little flap. Do the fun part, which is our tools in it. Do your flap down, roll it up. Strap. Go in place.
Now you can punch someone with it.
It's gonna hurt
There
your
you
fist, but it will also hurt them. So there you go.
Very cool. I've learned a lot, and I'm slightly less intimidated. So.
Well, I'm glad.
I mean, just like with anything, like sewing is like a skill and language that like you do have to like develop over time. But like this guy is like simple enough that with just like a little bit of patience, it's pretty like straightforward to make in terms of like.
Yeah, I just need like 40 of those. That's the problem. I got a lot of things that need to get like stuffed into bags.
Yeah, and they really are super handy. I love tool rolls mostly because if you're traveling with stuff, putting things in toolboxes and they like rattle around and get messed up and go everywhere, and I like them. They're quite handy.
And you have a lot of tools.
Yeah, I have a problem. I'm one of those people that collects tools. It's like the thing I'm allowed to spend money on. So.
Yeah, I hear you. I would probably need one for like fishing gear, I think, probably.
Mhm.
That would be really helpful. And I would want one in my for like farming, but I feel like it would just get disgusting very quickly.
But on the
But
plus side, it's cheap, so if it gets really disgusting and torn up, just make another one.
yeah, that's true. But yeah, I've learned a lot. This has been fantastic. I'm sure I'm not the only one. There's a bunch of folks tuning in that stayed the whole time. So hopefully that means because they're busy at their sewing machines trying to keep up.
And not
But yeah, any other last thoughts you wanted to bring up about sewing and what you guys do, or anything important?
no. um, uh,
Like I said before, I did make a little like doc that I can send to you, and if this gets posted anywhere, you can just add it in as like a little green one. I feel make the step by step. Yeah, as well. Yeah, this is us. This is Conquest of Thread. This is what we do.
we sew shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
this was awesome. I think people are really interested in learning how to sew and how to make functional things. It just, especially like with how expensive things are, and the fact that so much of the products we're buying are coming from places where there's basically slave labor. That the idea of like trying to produce some of it and mitigating some of that is really comforting, especially in a time of COVID when a lot of us are trapped at home and not going out. So I think a lot of people will be watching this and hopefully going to subscribe to your Instagram and checking out what you guys are making, and hopefully throwing you a couple bucks on your Venmo, which is listed right now at the bottom of the screen. And yeah, that is pretty much it I think I have for you, unless you've got anything else.
no, I think we're good. It's been really fun. Neither of us have done anything like this before, so I hope we did a good enough job. But yeah, it was fun. So if you want to do it again,
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been great. I'm gonna kick you off for a quick second. All right, now it's just me. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. That was fantastic. Again, it's the Conquest of Thread. If you're on Instagram, it's at ConquestofThreadShop. Throw them a couple bucks on Venmo at Conquest of Thread. If you guys enjoyed that content, you can continue the conversation over on our Discord. So just hop up over there. There's a bunch of folks that were watching this as well. So if you want to talk about what you saw, had any questions, anything like that, that's a great place to continue that conversation. So for everyone else, if you enjoyed this content, please help us continue to make content and support us at our Patreon. For $2, you can support the podcast, the Twitch channel, all of that important stuff. It breaks down to like less than 7 cents a day, and you get episode drops a week early. So if you have been listening to the podcast, go check it out. Lastly, if you do support us and you haven't, or you've been watching the Twitch channel or Facebook channel or Twitter or wherever you are, go check out our podcast if you aren't familiar with that. We're called the Poor Proles Almanac, just like the handle. And we just released an episode last week on the foodways of Indigenous Ireland. So if you're interested in traditional agriculture, hunter-gatherer society, history, Ireland, any of those things, you'll probably find it really interesting. So that's cool. John, you are asking for a link. What are you asking for a link for? The Discord? If you're looking for the Discord link, shoot us a message on any of the social medias and I can hook you guys up with that. Again, if you guys like this, want to see it continue, throw us a couple bucks on Patreon or go support us on Facebook or give us reviews on iTunes, any of those good things. They're really helpful. So I think that's just about it. So I'm going to let you guys go. Friday, we have the woke scientist on Instagram, Aisha Khan. She'll be on to talk about talking radical politics with family and friends. So I know a lot of folks feel really alienated in their communities or their families or whatever it might be because of their politics. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation with somebody who's highly qualified to talk about such matters. And I'm really looking forward to what that conversation brings. So if you guys have any other questions, hit us up on social media, and I look forward to seeing you guys around. Until next time, my name is Andy, and this is the Poor Proles Almanac.